The bus stop on 19th and Elms was mostly forgotten, just a chipped bench under a crooked street lamp, where shadows lingered longer than people did. On most days, no one sat there long enough to remember it existed, but that evening, as cold wind traced silver lines across the pavement, Ben Holloway noticed her. She wasn't asking for anything. That was the first thing he saw. No sign, no cup. No hungry look scanning passers-by. Just a soldier's stillness, sitting like she'd been carved from winter itself. Her duffel bag sat neatly by her boots, and her uniform, faded and unadorned, was zipped high against the wind. One hand rested on the strap. The other cradled something close beneath her jacket. Ben might have walked past. He often did, past the broken things. The held-in tears. The reminders, but something in her. Posture, the rigid grace, the way she didn't shiver, stopped him. Or maybe it wasn't her? Maybe it was the wind that sounded like his late wife's whisper, or the way his little boy Jamie had said just that morning, Dad, why do people act like no one's hurting? Ben knew what that hurt looked like when no one else did, so he paused, one breath. Then two, the soldier glanced up, eyes sharp. Not wide or begging, sharp, like a dog waiting to see if the boot will fall. You waiting for someone? He asked, his voice quiet like the frost. No, she replied. The word brittle but polite. Her accent was clipped West Texas. Her breath made soft clouds in the air. He looked down at the empty bench beside her. Snow hadn't gathered where she sat. She'd been there a while. You got somewhere to go? She didn't answer. Gave him a long look, like she was weighing him against some memory. Ben didn't press. He just nodded and turned to walk away, 3 steps. Then her voice came low, unexpected. People don't usually ask. He turned again, slower this time. Maybe they should. A small shrug, that could have been agreement. Or surrender, and then, without knowing why he said it, you're coming with me. Her eyebrows lifted, just barely. One heartbeat, too, but she didn't argue. She stood. His truck was old but warm. The heater took a few minutes to hum to life, wheezing like an asthmatic furnace. Jamie's car seat sat in the back, facing forward, a plastic dinosaur wedged. In the cup holder, as the soldier slid into the passenger seat, she looked down at it. You got a kid? Ben nodded. Jamie, he's 6. Likes building forts under the table. Kids are good at hiding, she murmured. Voice half swallowed by engine noise. He glanced at her again, at the way her hand hadn't left the thing under her jacket. You got a name? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Then River. Sergeant River Lane. The silence after that name felt heavier. Been out long? Ben asked, careful not to sound like he was digging. 2 months, she said. Not used to stoplights yet. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. His past had no stoplights either, just a stretch of bad road he didn't like to talk about. His house was small, the kind of home that looked tired in the daylight but warm at night, porch light flickering, wind chimes made from spoons. Tinkling in the wind. Jamie wasn't home. Not yet. He was at his friend Caleb's place, building that new pillow fort empire. Ben made coffee. He didn't ask if she wanted some, just poured. 2 mugs, and set one across from her on the kitchen table. She hadn't taken off her jacket. That bothered him more than he expected. The silence sat between them like an uninvited guest. But it wasn't uncomfortable. Sometimes silence meant trust. River broke it after a while. You don't know me? Nope. You could have just walked on. Could have. She didn't ask why he didn't. Maybe she already knew. Later. When the coffee was gone and the house quiet enough to hear the hum of the fridge, Ben pulled a blanket from the couch drawer and set it on the armrest. You can take the bed. I'll sleep out here. I'm fine on the floor, she said automatically. I know, he said, almost smiling. But we don't always have to be. There was no answer to that, but for the first time she looked away. Not in shame. Just softened. When she emerged from the bathroom, her hair was wet. Her jacket was still on, but something was different, She walked to the couch, looked at the framed photo above it, a young woman with laugh lines and a wide, open smile, holding a toddler, sunlight painting their cheeks. Your wife? River asked. Ben nodded. She died 5 years ago, cancer, She said nothing for a moment. Then she looks kind. She was. He whispered. River finally took off her jacket. The thing she'd kept hidden slipped out with it. It was a tiny pair of combat boots, not regulation, toy-sized, carefully polished. The laces tied in a double knot. Ben didn't ask. He just watched her carry them to the coffee table and set them down with a reverence that made the room feel sacred. Then she said the quietest words he'd ever heard. Her name was Wren. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, the wind pushed leaves across the porch. Inside. 2 strangers sat beside ghosts, and somehow neither one felt quite so alone. The morning came softly, with pale sunlight brushing the frost on the windows like a mother's touch, hesitant, apologetic. Ben stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, while the scent of coffee curled through the kitchen like an old memory. He heard her footsteps before he saw her, slow, measured, almost like she was testing the floor. River stepped into the doorway wearing the same clothes as last night. Her eyes scanned the room like it was foreign soil, but she said nothing. Morning. Ben offered, not turning from the skillet. She nodded. Smells like normal. That's the goal. A tiny smile, there and gone. Then came the sound of the front door bursting open. Dad! Caleb's mom let me bring home the cool flashlight look. Jamie tore into the room like sunlight with legs. His boots squeaked on the hardwood, cheeks flushed from the cold. He stopped mid-run when he saw her. River stiffened barely, but enough for Ben to notice. Jamie blinked. Who's that? Ben dried his hands on a towel, kneeling beside him. This is Miss River. She's our guest. Jamie looked up at her, then at the tiny boots on the coffee table. Then, like only a child could, he whispered, Are those hers? River didn't speak. Her eyes were still on the boy. Ben stood. Hey, bud, can you go wash your hands? Breakfast's almost ready. Jamie nodded and ran off. Flashlight flicking on and off behind him. Only when the water began running down the hall did River speak again. I haven't talked to a kid in 3 years. Ben didn't pry. She sat slowly, her eyes falling. Back on the boots? They were a gift, she said after a while. Before we deployed. One of the wives back home knitted a uniform for each of our girls. Told us we'd need something to hold on to. Ben nodded, quietly flipping a pancake. She didn't make it, River whispered. He didn't need to ask who. The air told him everything. River's jaw clenched. 2 years old. Bronchial infection? I was on rotation. Came back to a voicemail. And a folded flag. The coffee bubbled. The pancake hissed. The silence held. Ben finally turned. I'm sorry. I don't want sorry, she said not harshly, just tired. I want 10 minutes back. Just 10. He didn't say the usual things about time healing or pain fading. He just placed her mug in front of her and slid a small plate of pancakes across the table. I don't pray. She said almost to herself, You don't have to. He replied, Some mornings just making pancakes is enough? Jamie returned with clean hands and messy hair. He didn't ask questions. Just sat beside River and offered her half his orange slice without a word. Ben watched her hesitate and then take it. The gesture was small. But her fingers trembled when they brushed his. That afternoon, Ben worked in the shed behind the house, repairing a loose hinge on Jamie's birdhouse. River sat on the porch steps, sipping more coffee, watching the wind pull through the trees. Jamie was tracing shapes in the snow with a stick, pretending to be a scout on a secret mission. At one point he called to her, Miss River, do you want to be on my team? Asterisk, she didn't move at first, then quietly, "Sure." Asterisk, he tossed her a stick like it was a rifle. She caught it one-handed. Asterisk, they patrolled the backyard together, him narrating an imaginary world, her listening like each word was a bridge. Back to something long buried, Asterisk Ben watched through the shed window, his breath fogging the glass. He hadn't seen someone listen like that in years. Asterisk, that evening, River stood at the kitchen sink, drying dishes, then dried the others beside her. "You don't ask many questions," she said. "Never been good at them," he replied. "Besides, people usually answer in other ways." River nodded slowly, still drying. Then she asked one herself. Asterisk, "Why did you stop that day? At the bus stop?" Ben leaned against the counter, thoughtful. "Because you looked like you'd forgotten how to be asked." She stilled. He went on. "I know that look, had it myself once. After my wife passed, I used to sit at that same stop, told myself I was just catching air, but I was waiting. For something, anything, and no one ever asked me if I had somewhere to go." She swallowed hard. "I didn't want you to feel like I did," he added. Unseen. Later, after Jamie had fallen asleep curled on the couch, beside a book he never finished, River lingered by the window. Snow began again, light, gentle, like the sky had finally decided to forgive. Ben stood beside her. Asterisk, "You staying long?" he asked, careful with the weight of his words. "I don't know," she said. "You've got space here." Asterisk, "I don't want to be a burden." Asterisk, "You're not." Asterisk, she turned toward him. "You don't know what I've done." Asterisk, he met her eyes. Asterisk, "You're not what you've done. You're what you carry, and how you carry it." Her eyes watered, but she blinked them dry. "You say things like that often?" she asked, managing a ghost of a smile. Asterisk, "Only when it matters." That night he found her in the living room again. She was holding the boots, not looking at them, just holding. Asterisk, "I used to sing to her," she whispered. "When we had time?" Ben sat on the floor nearby, quiet. "I wasn't much good, but she'd laugh every time. Like my voice cracked the stars open." Silence again. "I can't hear it anymore," River said, her laugh. "I try, but it's like it's gone." Ben hesitated, then reached behind him and brought forward an old tape player. "Cassette or CD?" he asked softly. Asterisk, River blinked. "Cassette." Asterisk, he nodded. "Good, this still works." Asterisk, then he stood and left her there, the tape player glowing faintly beside her like a lantern in the dark. The next morning the sky was heavy with unshed snow, and the air tasted like waiting. Asterisk, River stood in the hallway, holding the old tape player close to her chest. She hadn't slept much. The creases beneath her eyes were softer now, not just from fatigue, but from memory. She hadn't pressed play. Not yet. Asterisk, downstairs. Jamie was coloring birds at the table. He was telling a story as he drew. Something about a crow teaching a robin how to fly faster. Asterisk, Ben watched from the kitchen, his hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. River descended the stairs quietly. Jamie looked up. "Want to draw with me?" Asterisk, she paused. Her hand tightened on the tape player. Then she sat down beside him and picked up a pencil. "Only if I get to name one." They spent the morning like that, soft laughter between colors, stories between silences. Asterisk, Ben didn't interrupt. He just watched something unfold that didn't need naming. Asterisk, after lunch, River stood by the window again, watching the sky dim toward slate. Asterisk, "I need to go into town," she said. Asterisk, Ben turned from the sink. "For what?" Asterisk, she hesitated. "Something I left behind." Asterisk, she didn't explain. He didn't ask. Instead, he pulled his truck keys from the bowl by the door. "I'll drive." The ride into town was quiet, save for the sound of tires crunching over salted roads. The storefronts flickered past like half-remembered dreams, old diners, faded laundromats, a bookstore with a closed for renovation sign that had hung for 3 years. Asterisk, River finally pointed to a narrow alley, just past Main. Asterisk, "Here." Ben parked beside the curb, watching her closely. She climbed out slowly. Jacket zipped high. Asterisk. There was a bench near the alley's mouth, warped. Pain feeling, River said. Not like she was tired, like she was returning to something sacred. This is where she told me, she said, eyes distant. Ben sat beside her without a word. My husband, she added. Well, technically, we signed papers before deployment. Said we'd figure it out after. Ren stayed with his mother. Said it was better that way. She paused. She called me. Left a message. Sighed Ren had been sick for days, but the hospital wouldn't admit her. Insurance lapsed, said she tried. Asterisk River's jaw tensed. Her breath fogged the cold asterisk. I got the message 3 days late. I was out in the desert. Signal was dead. When I landed, there was a voicemail from the hospital. Past tense. She looked down at her hands. Sometimes I wonder if she cried for me, if she knew why I wasn't there. Asterisk Ben said nothing. Just let the silence settle like snowfall. Asterisk River opened her palm. Inside was a small, creased piece of lined paper, folded 4 times. She held it like a bird she couldn't bring herself to free. Asterisk, she drew this, she whispered. Her last drawing. Her grandma sent it with the letter after the funeral. I didn't open it until a month ago. Ben watched her unfold it with reverence. It was a simple drawing, a stick figure with long hair, standing beneath a crooked sun. A second, taller figure beside it, holding hands. Underneath, written in uneven block letters, Mommy home soon. Ben felt something crack inside. River smoothed the page against her leg. Eyes damp but unblinking. Asterisk, I used to think grief was loud, she said. But it's not, it's quiet, like being underwater. She glanced over. I thought if I held still long enough, maybe the world would forget I left her. Maybe then I could forget too. Ben's voice was barely a whisper. You don't. Have to forget to heal. Asterisk River folded the page again, slower this time. I think I'm ready to hear her voice now. They returned home as the first snow began to fall again, this time soft and steady, like the sky was finally letting go. River climbed the stairs alone. Ben stayed downstairs. Watching Jamie line up dinosaurs by the fireplace, asterisk, he heard. The click of the tape player, asterisk, then a pause, then a child's laugh, asterisk, light. Wind chime bright, it floated down the staircase like music from another world. Ben closed his eyes, later. River came downstairs with red eyes and a stillness that wasn't heavy anymore. Just quiet, asterisk, she placed the boots on the mantel beside a small candle and one of Jamie's scribbled drawings, asterisk. She'd like it here, she said, asterisk. Jamie walked over and stood beside her, asterisk. He pointed to the boots. Do you think she'd want to play secret missions with me? River knelt beside him, brushing a hand over his shoulder. I think she already is. That night, Ben made stew. They sat around the table like they had always belonged there, 3 quiet souls, sharing bread and warmth and something too deep for words. River looked up suddenly. I want to stay. A little longer? Ben didn't react, he just passed her the butter and said, asterisk, good. Before bed, Jamie asked for a story. River offered to read one, asterisk. She sat beside his small bed, holding a worn picture book in her lap. Her voice was slow at first, unsure, but halfway through, something softened. She read like the words mattered, like they were stitching something back together. Asterisk. Ben stood in the hallway, listening, asterisk, not daring to breathe. When she stepped out of the room, she leaned against the wall and looked at him, asterisk. Tomorrow, she said. I want to visit her grave. Ben only nodded. I'd like company, she added. He met her eyes. You'll have it. The cemetery was small, more meadow than marble, nestled behind a line of pines that muffled the wind. Snow lay soft over the earth, like a blanket carefully placed by unseen hands. No cars, no noise. Just the hush of breath and the creak of old branches swaying in the cold. Asterisk. Ben stood beside River as she stared at the headstone. Ren Alien Lane 2019-2021 asterisk. Little star, still shining. Asterisk. River hadn't spoken since they arrived. She simply stood, gloved hands holding a fresh sunflower, Ren's favorite. According to the letter, Ben didn't interrupt. Grief, he'd learned, isn't a thing you fix. It's a thing you carry. And sometimes you just stand quietly beside it. River finally knelt, slowly, reverently. She brushed snow from the stone's edge, then placed the sunflower just above the carved name. Asterisk from her coat pocket she pulled. The tiny boots. Asterisk, not the real ones, a smaller version she'd sewn herself over the last 2 nights. Jamie had helped her pick the yellow thread. For sunshine, he'd said. She set the little boots beside the flower. Then she reached into her other pocket, pulled out the folded drawing, and placed it underneath the boots like a note tucked into a lunchbox. Asterisk, her breath hitched. But she didn't cry, not this time. Instead, she whispered. Asterisk, hey, little bird, it's Mom. Ben turned to walk back toward the truck, giving her space. But River called softly, stay. So he did. She kept talking, the way a mother might to a child fast asleep, telling her about snowflakes that looked like stars, and pancakes that tasted like Saturday mornings, and a boy named Jamie who talked to birds and shared his crayons. Without asking why, asterisk, I was scared to come, she said, voice cracking at last. Scared I wasn't allowed to hold you in memory anymore. Like I'd lost that right, asterisk, she wiped her cheek, not a sob. Just one tear. Asterisk, but I know now, you didn't leave me. I just lost the sound of you, and that's okay. I found it. Again, I found me again, a long pause, then I'll be okay. Asterisk, Ben stepped beside her and knelt too. They sat in silence, side by side in the snow, until the wind stopped and the stillness felt full, not empty. That night, River lit a candle for Wren. Jamie helped her place it on the mantel. They didn't speak, just watched the flame flicker. In rhythm with their breathing. Asterisk, later, after Jamie had gone to bed, River stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Ben make tea. Asterisk, I want to ask you something, she said. Ben looked up, waiting. I'm not sure where I'll go yet. But when I do, she paused, could I still write to Jamie? Maybe visit sometimes? Ben didn't smile, but his eyes softened. Asterisk, you can stay as long as you want, and even after that. This house is yours too. Asterisk, River didn't answer. She didn't need to. Asterisk, she walked to the window and looked out into the snowy dark. That kind of darkness that feels soft, not threatening. Asterisk, funny, she said. I thought I was done, thought life was behind me. Ben passed her the tea. Maybe this is the life, he said. The part after the storm. The quiet. Asterisk, she took a sip, held the warmth between her palms. Asterisk, I think I'd like that. Weeks passed, then a month. River stayed. Asterisk, she moved her things into the guest room. Took over school drop-offs when Ben worked long shifts. Helped Jamie finish a shoebox diorama about planets, even though she didn't know which ones had rings. Every so often she sat by the fire with the tape player. Sometimes she listened. Asterisk, other times she just held it. Ben never asked which. One night, while River folded laundry in the living room, Jamie sat cross-legged on the rug. Asterisk, he looked up suddenly and said, Can I call you something else? Asterisk, River looked at him, one eyebrow raised. Like what? He thought hard, then whispered, Mama River. The world stopped. River sat down slowly. Asterisk, she didn't cry. Not right then. She just pulled him close and kissed the top of his head. That would be an honor, she said. Asterisk, and this time the tears that came were quiet. But welcome. Spring arrived one slow bloom at a time. Asterisk, the sunflower seeds Jamie and River had planted in. Wren's memory began to rise behind the porch, green stems stretching like tiny hands toward the sun. Asterisk, one afternoon, Ben found River in the shed, sanding an old piece of wood. Asterisk, what's that for? He asked. Asterisk, she blew sawdust from her gloves. A bench. Asterisk, he tilted his head. For the backyard? Asterisk, no, she said, for the cemetery. I figured other moms might need a place to sit. Asterisk, Ben nodded. Need help? She handed him a brush. Asterisk, the day they placed the bench at Wren's grave, River tied a small yellow ribbon to one leg. Jamie left a drawing taped beneath the seat, a house, a sun, and 3 stick figures holding hands. On the back he'd written, You're still here. Asterisk, River smiled and whispered, Yes, baby. Always. One evening long after Jamie had fallen asleep, and the stars were scattered like old coins across the sky. River and Ben sat on the back porch, listening to crickets and wind. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Not romantic. Not yet, just real. I never said thank you, she murmured. Asterisk, you don't have to. Asterisk, I want to. Asterisk, he looked out toward the sunflower patch. The tallest one had just started to open. Asterisk, you saved me, Ben Holloway. He shook his head. No, he whispered, I just saw you. You did the rest. She reached for his hand and held it. Long and quiet, like a promise neither of them needed to speak. Some stories don't end in fireworks. Asterisk, they end in small hands tugging your sleeve. In boots placed gently on a mantle. In a voice that once broke, learning to sing again, River never left. Not really. Asterisk, she stayed. Like spring stays after a hard winter, quietly, softly, fully. Asterisk, in every year, when the sunflowers bloomed. She and Jamie would walk to that quiet grave, sit on the bench she built, and tell Wren all about their new life. She never answered, but somehow, they always left feeling heard. If this story touched your heart, let someone know. Asterisk, these stories matter. Subscribe or share where you're watching from, because sometimes kindness is the only miracle we need.